Discerning Hearts provides content dedicated to those on the spiritual journey. To continue production of these videos, prayers, and more, go to discerninghearts.com and click the donate link found there or inside the free Discerning Hearts app to make your donation. Thanks, and God bless.
DiscerningHearts.com presents Inside the Pages, insights from today's most compelling authors. I'm your host, Kris McGregor, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Binz, who is a biblical scholar and an award-winning author of over 60 books. He's also a popular speaker, offering keynotes, seminars, and workshops at national and regional conferences, and education for pastoral leaders. With Stephen Binz, we go inside the pages of Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, a pilgrimage guide to the California missions, published by Franciscan Media. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
You're so welcome, Kris. Thank you for having me.
I'm grateful to be able to bring you to those who are listening because I think you're quite a professor of how to listen, to be able to enter into a lectio wherever you are at, finding God, whether it's in a pilgrimage or in the scriptures, wherever that encounter, to have that continued receptivity. I think that's one of the hallmarks of your gift and what you bring to everyone. And so I'm so glad to have you here today. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and thank you for saying those things. That means a lot to me, and that is really kind of at the heart of my work. You know, holy viewing and holy listening and all of that is so much a part of the kind of pilgrimage work that I do and the type of books that I write on the scriptures.
And it's listening with the ear of the heart, isn't it? It's that, and even and seeing in a very real way with the eyes of the heart. All that senses that's the place where it all passes through, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, seeing and listening, and you know the spiritual masters explain that the more senses we can use in our spiritual practice, the more rich the experience. So, for example, when we read the scriptures, I teach people how to read aloud. That's not only how the ancients always read, but it allows the person to see the text with the eyes and to speak the text with the lips and to hear the text with the ears. So all the senses are involved. So the same thing is true with reading the scriptures. The same is true for gazing at icons, for example, and certainly is true for the whole experience of Christian pilgrimage. You know, it's the way we see and hear and enter into the experience that is so transformative for us.
Well, you've written some incredible books about how to do just that with the Mass to help break open the mystery of this great Eucharist that we are able to partake in. But I want to bring you back to talk about those too. But I think that's it. We're the whole person created, of course, in the image of God, and not necessarily in his perfection, but he gives us the tools to be able to experience him in so many ways, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And that's why I love, the Holy Land. One of those places that you mentioned I was traveling these days was the Holy Land. I led a pilgrimage there just a few weeks ago, and that's, to encounter those places as a pilgrim with scripture in hand, reading the text and praying at the sites. That's just one of the fathers of the church called it the fifth gospel. It really is a way to encounter the Word of God in a new way. And that's true for so many other kinds of experiences too, not only with the text of scripture. And that's led me to other kinds of pilgrimages. Not only bring people to the Holy Land, to Greece and Turkey for the rest of the New Testament, but also now to Marian sites. And I just love the sites of the saints, because all of those are ways to enter into the mystery of Christ through the experiences and encounters of other people, and to share in that and to share it with others as well.
Okay, now we're going to be talking, everyone, about Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, a pilgrimage guide to the California missions. But you brought up the Holy Land, and you do have a phenomenal book that's been out for a little while, but it's so beautiful and so current. The one on the Holy Land pilgrimage, which I just happened to take with me as I just made a recent trip to the Holy Land, but also a newer book about taking the pilgrimage to Poland.
Yes.
And so I got to mention those. I want to get those right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm so happy with the way those turned out. I loved writing them because, I got to share with others in book form, in word form, what I experienced at those places, as well as to provide a kind of an encounter for them through prayer and scripture in each of those places. And also to include my photography. Not only am I a writer, but I enjoy photography as well. And my publishers have, each one of them in a different way have expressed through photography and through words and design the joy and the richness of going to those places and entering into the experience. So I'm just so happy with the way that each one of those books turned out. And I thank the publishers especially for that.
Well, and especially in this book, the Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, it is an idea who I think we should embrace, a Camino right here in the United States. North America, it's just not limited to the United States, to North America. Oftentimes we have a desire to be able to travel, to maybe go to the places that more often than not in pilgrimage are located literally on the other side of the world. And yet here in the United States, North America, we have a beautiful opportunity with our rich spiritual patrimony, which may be baby in size compared to that other part of the world. And yet it still offers such rich graces, doesn't it?
It does. Saint Junipero Serra is one of my heroes. He's just such a fascinating person. When Pope Francis announced a few years ago that he was going to canonize Saint Junipero Serra as one of the great saints for North America, he emphasized that Serra is a missionary disciple, and he wanted to emphasize that calling that we all have to be missionary disciples in the world. And I think that we can look at Serra as such an inspiration for us, because in a whole different age, in a whole different way, he was a missionary disciple. And, although it's not really fair to judge the past according to the standards of the present, we don't evangelize in quite the same way today. And certainly mistakes were made in the past. But nevertheless, he has a heroic spirit. And I think he is a true saint that we can all imitate and look to. And as you say, he's a saint for our own country. While there are lots of sacred sites in the United States, as young as our history is, nevertheless, I think that the way of Saint Junipero Serra, which is essentially those 21 beautiful, originally Franciscan missions up and down the coast of California, is just one of the most beautiful, rich, spiritual journeys that anyone could take. So that's what I did when I heard that Pope Francis was going to canonize Serra. I went to California. First I read lots of books. I read some of the wonderful biographies of Serra, some of which have been done in recent years. There's some very, very good stuff out there on Serra. And also read his letters and, communications from him and to him, and really got to know him. And then, of course, I flew to California and rented a car and started in San Diego and went the whole mission route. And it really is a beautiful pilgrimage. If you do it quickly, you can do about 3 missions a day. So it takes about a week, but probably best to spread that out some, or maybe even do it on several different occasions to get in all 21 of the missions. But first of all, they're beautiful places. They're holy places. They're rich with the native culture of California, because the native peoples are the ones who built them, and they were built for them. And their spirit still very much pervades those missions.
Well, you do such a beautiful job in chapter 4 of the book, where you talk about the spirituality of the native peoples of California. I think that is an area that could be dived into even more deeply in our own appreciation of what they bring into the church's experience.
Yes, for sure. It's a rich sort of natural spirituality that the natives had before Christianity was brought to them by Serra and the Franciscan missionaries. And so, grace builds on nature. Christianity builds on the rich spiritual experiences of native peoples who came before them, and that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it was done in California. Serra had a rich appreciation for the natural spirituality of the native peoples. They had a rich appreciation for the land and, the spirits that are within the natural creation. And of course, Franciscan spirituality really just builds on that. And so to kind of dialogue with native spirituality and the rich creation-centered Franciscan spirituality, the spirituality of St. Francis of Assisi and St. Clare, that's what Serra brought to the native peoples, and that's what the native peoples gave to him as well. And so, I think that to talk about the missions and the life of Serra in terms of that kind of spirituality can go a long way in healing many of the challenges that came from the mission life and the misunderstandings of people today about Junipero Serra and the Spanish missions and what their goal was and what they accomplished there.
Yeah, there is so much to be spoken about in that section that you have in the book as well, called Acknowledging the Past and Working Toward Healing, is that we take a look at the interaction of people and trying to understand cultures and trying to learn to live together with the reality of expansion. Not only as the missions are being established, the Franciscan priests are moving out and leading in that call of evangelization, you have other factors. You have people that are, the human race is expanding. It's moving out beyond all kinds of borders. And a lot of times interactions of extremely different cultures, they clashed. And a lot of times that resulted in a lot of pain. And I think when we look at Saint Junipero Serra's life, he was trying in many ways to be a bridge. And all the Franciscans who came, unfortunately, sometimes it went well and other times it didn't. But that's true of any time in human culture when those type of expansions happen, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's right. I think people who kind of blame Serra for all the results of the colonization of California, are really off base. The native peoples loved Junipero Serra, and he loved them. He gave up a very successful academic life there in Mallorca, the island off of Spain where he is from, and he went to what is today Mexico and then to California late in his life, and he felt a real calling as an academic to go on mission. And that's exactly what he did. He spent the rest of his life on missions and bringing the gospel to the native peoples. And he did that out of love. First of all, love for Christ. And the more he encountered them, the more he grew in his love for the native peoples. And when you read his biographies and his letters, you realize what a heart he had for the people and how he defended them from the Spaniards, from the military, and many of the abuses that were taking place there. One of the first, we might call sort of a Bill of Rights, he was able to accomplish from the Spanish military for the native peoples. And so he was, he sought justice for them, and his whole idea was to teach them. The reality, as you said so well, this was a clash of cultures. The Europeans were coming to California, whether it be the Spanish or the English or the Russians eventually from the Alaska region. Europe was coming to California, and so life was going to change dramatically for the native peoples. And so the whole idea of the Spanish missions was to certainly bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to the native peoples, but also at the same time train them in skills, agricultural skills, and lots of other kinds of skills that would enable them to be an important part of and to survive in and thrive in this new culture that would inevitably come to California. I think the whole idea of the missions accomplished that in large part. Of course, the downside was, all these diseases, this understanding of, there's no understanding of bacteria at the time, of course, and spread of diseases and all that sort of thing. But they didn't, the native peoples didn't have the immune system for some of the European diseases that the missionaries and the colonists brought. It's also very true that we can, compare the Spaniard colonization with the later occupation of the native peoples by the Mexican government and then by the American government. And the cruelty to the native peoples and the deaths under the Mexican and then the American government paled in comparison to the negative results that were part of the Spanish colonization.
We'll return to Inside the Pages in just a moment. This is Kris McGregor of Discerning Hearts, a nonprofit Catholic apostolate dedicated to evangelization and spiritual formation through the use of new media. Discerning Hearts creates engaging multimedia specializing in audio and video productions which are faithful to the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church and its rich, authentic spiritual tradition. Its mission responds to the Church's call to use the media for evangelization, catechesis, and spiritual renewal. We have made a commitment since the beginning to make the truth shared through Discerning Hearts totally free to users throughout the world. Besides our website, discerninghearts.com, Discerning Hearts has a newly updated free app where users can find all their favorite Discerning Hearts programming, including Father Timothy Gallagher, Dr. Anthony Lillis, Deacon James Keating, Mike Aquilina, Dr. Matthew Bunson, and so many more. There, too, you'll find numerous beautifully produced devotionals and novenas, including the Holy Rosary and Stations of the Cross, to help users create a sacred time for prayer wherever they may be. Discerning Hearts programming can be found on numerous streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and so many more. Discerning Hearts also has an ever-growing YouTube channel. Discerning Hearts online spiritual retreats and seminars have helped souls in North and South America, Europe, Africa, Australia, the Middle East, and the Philippines. For many people all around the world, Discerning Hearts is a daily source of inspiration, spiritual nourishment, and encouragement. We can only do this thanks to the generous financial support of our friends and benefactors. Please consider donating to our mission today. The world is looking for answers, for spiritual guidance and authentic discernment, for relationship and community. Your support is very much needed and appreciated. Please keep our mission in your prayers and tell a friend about Discerning Hearts. We now return to Inside the Pages. We're talking with Stephen Binz, the author of Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, a pilgrimage guide to the California missions.
The tragedy of exploitation of communities by those who have a bit more power, or maybe we should say a lot of power. Whether you're in pilgrimage along the beautiful California coastline, or if you're in France or in the Holy Land, wherever that might be, Italy, of course, usually those places of pilgrimage are sites of the rising up of the light of grace, that those moments of holiness, even through those times, these became sanctuary places. And the holiness is what we pilgrim towards, isn't it? That we want to touch base with. That is usually laid down from those lives of sanctity in the midst of all of that difficulty, challenge, and pain, struggle, suffering. I'm not trying to make it dark, but it's actually, those are places of light. And that's why we want to go there, isn't it, Stephen?
That's right. Yeah, it is for sure. Yeah, the missions were beautiful places, but they had their dark side for sure. One of the parts of my book I just turned to it is called Inspiring Quotations for Pilgrimage. And it's quotations by Serra and by people who writing about Serra. I enjoy reading some of those quotations, and I'll read you one by Serra. when he's describing the mission, he's in the midst of the mission, looking around him, and this is what he sees. He says, "The spectacle of seeing about 100 young children of about the same age, praying and answering individually all the questions asked on Christian doctrine, hearing them sing, seeing them going about clothed in cotton and woolen garments, playing happily, and who deal with the padres so intimately as if they had always known them, is indeed something moving, a thing for which God is to be thanked. Every day, Indians are coming in from the distant homes in the Sierra. They told the padres that they would like them to come to their territory. They see our church, which stands before their eyes so neatly. They see the milpas with corn, which are pretty to behold. They see so many children as well as people like themselves going about clothed, who sing and eat well and work. All of this together with the way our Lord God touches their souls. Who can doubt that he will win their hearts?" And that's a beautiful vision, a beautiful description of the desire of Serra for the missions, a way of looking at the missions that is not emphasized very much anymore. The misunderstanding by many people today of the mission culture and the way that, Saint Serra's statues are being, defaced and all of that sort of thing is as I said, he's being blamed for the whole colonization movement, which certainly had many negative effects. And because he was the first, he was the father of California, many would describe him as, and for many years, such a hero of California. And still, all the fourth graders of California learn about Serra. They study the missions, and it's such an important part of their culture. And Serra's, has a statue in Washington, D.C. in the rotunda of the Capitol. And what's done to him today is, by and large, as I said, a misunderstanding. And people who go to the missions and read Serra's biographies and read his letters, that's going to go a long way in healing this kind of misunderstanding that we see so much of today.
And let's talk about the communion of saints. Let's talk about those who the missions have as their unique patrons. Yes. Who, as you go on these pilgrimages, it's not only with Father Serra and those Franciscan missionaries and the people that he touched, those Christians, Catholics that were transformed by their spiritual life with Christ, but it's also with the great saints who mark each spot, not to pick on California, this time that we are living in, which is kind of a struggle in a very real way for the church and for the people of God and trying to live that faith out. We can be spiritually fed, nurtured by honoring each of the saints we encounter, as you so beautifully outline in descriptions of the 21 missions.
Yeah, I love each one of the missions for various reasons. I certainly have my favorites, but most of them are named for the saints. And you go up and down the coast of California today and see all the cities who are named after the saints. So many people don't even know that Los Angeles is named for the angels and Our Lady of the Angels, and San Diego for the saints, and San Francisco, Santa Barbara. They're all named for the saints who became the patrons of the missions in those places, and today are the name of the thriving city that in California. So each one of those missions has their own patron saint. And that's what I include in the book also. Part of the prayer services that I wrote for each one of the missions is a prayer through and with the saints of the mission.
For those of us who are located right here in North America, maybe a little more easily get to this Camino pilgrimage. Mm-hmm. There is, in the section of the book, it actually comes very early, you describe that if we can't make it that way, we can enter into a pilgrimage, even in our armchair, to be able to pray with each of these different reflections, these different stories, these lovely missions. Even today, there's a way of doing that. And I'm so grateful that you brought this forward in the book.
Yeah, armchair pilgrimage is a way that so many people are doing pilgrimage today. For those who are unable to travel for one reason or another, the next best thing to being there, I would say, is an armchair pilgrimage. And to take a book like this and choose one mission a day, for example, and kind of go in your imagination to that place through the photography I provide, through the descriptions that I provide. You can supplement it through your own internet searches, and then enter into prayer through the prayer experiences that I have for each one of the missions. It can be a wonderful way to journey on pilgrimage, just in your own armchair.
So I really encourage that. But then also you bring a pretty easy descriptions on how you can do this if you want to travel by car, or even if you want to do a pilgrimage on foot or by bike.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I recommend a car. It's challenging. By foot and bike is very difficult from the California missions, although there are a number of people, you can find them online, who are doing it and who have written books about the trails they've used and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, much of it is on asphalt. Much of it is the 101 highway up and down California. So it's not like the Camino of Santiago de Compostela. It can be done in that way, but I recommend car. It's so easy to fly out to California, rent a car in San Diego, and with your GPS device these days, it's so easy just to put in the name of the mission, and then it'll show you exactly how to get there, how long it's going to take you to get there, and it's very, very easy to do a pilgrimage in that way in our day.
Well, Stephen, there's so many reasons why I love this book. Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, A Pilgrimage Guide to the California Missions. I really, again, I highly encourage people to pick up a copy. I mean, this is part of the North American spiritual patrimony, isn't it? I mean, this is something that we all should be very aware of, and allow grace to also penetrate our lives through being open to listening, to seeing. And again, your pictures in the book, the photography and the quality of the book is so worthy of the great mystery that you're breaking open for everybody. I just think it's valuable for all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Kris. I'm very proud of this book, and I know that has led many people to California on pilgrimage in the way of Saint Junipero Serra. As you said so well, it really is an American Camino. It's an American pilgrimage path, and we can go on pilgrimage. And great thing about it is it's one of the most beautiful, naturally beautiful areas of our country as well. So we can pray and gaze on the sights and eat some of that wonderful California food and its wine, which, by the way, came from the missions. The whole wine culture of California derived from those Franciscan missionaries. Enter into the culture of California by going to the missions.
And not to forget that this also is an opportunity for those who, by doing an action like this, whether it's a armchair pilgrimage or maybe it is one by automobile, or those hardy souls that can do it by foot or by bike, but it's an opportunity not only to pray for this close relationship for ourselves, but maybe also to offer and intercede for the healing that needs to take place, not only in California, in the church in that area. There's no doubt our brothers and sisters need that type of intercessory prayer right now, something that can help us in North America, but all the whole world, to maybe ask the Lord to help us. Don't you think?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way to pray, and a prayer that's so much needed, I think, in California, about this situation and the missionary culture of California and its results and the heart that led it. So yes, we can pray for healing for sure in those places. And I think healing not only comes through prayer, but it comes through understanding, by really understanding the history, by being honest about the history and about the life of Serra and the Franciscans and the Native American people. So many of them are still Catholics today, and they're very proud of these places. There's a rich Native American Catholicism that thrives in California, and they're centered on the missions. And so many of the Native peoples of California are so proud of these missions. They belong to them, through the church. And so by encountering not only these physical buildings, but by encountering the Native American peoples in California, that can be a wonderful experience of healing and grace as well.
Well, and I always encourage people when they do these pilgrimages, whether it's a church that you're visiting, the mission that you might be visiting, be sure to, in one way, if it's to offer some type of stewardship, maybe it's in the suffering of the journey that you're on or in that prayer, but also maybe even in your financial help. I think that's an important part of the pilgrimage experience, is to give it back a bit more to the place that you're visiting, don't you think?
Yes, I think so, for sure. A lot of foundations have rebuilt the missions and are keeping them up, but most of them are active Catholic parishes today, all but two. Two of them are owned by the state, I think, and who run them, but 19 of them are active Catholic parishes. Not just Franciscan these days, but some of them are diocesan, others are, one is Jesuit. There are various different orders and communities that run and keep up these missions, and they certainly can use our financial help in addition to our prayerful support. So that's an important part of pilgrimage as well.
Well, Stephen, I wish we had more time, but I'm hoping that we can continue to have further conversations on so much of your other work. But in this particular conversation on Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, a pilgrimage guide to the California missions, do you have any final thoughts?
Oh, gosh, life is short, so go on a pilgrimage.
There you go.
So many people go with me in the last stages of their life and have a hard time getting around sometimes. So, you're never too young for a pilgrimage. So I say, go. There's nothing more richly transforming than Catholic pilgrimage to holy places. And that's what I spend a lot of my time promoting and getting ready for and writing about. So I know the benefits of pilgrimage from the people I've led to lots of different places. So I would just encourage as many people as possible to go on pilgrimage. There's so many different kinds and so many different places, but each one of them are unique, and each one of them have their own graces associated with them.
Definitely go with holy souls like Stephen Binz, because you don't want it to be a tour or a vacation travel log. This pilgrimage can be so much richer, so much deeper if it's truly a pilgrimage, especially those that will lead you in deeper into your heart. Well, Stephen Binz, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Kris. Been so nice being with you, and hope we can talk again.
With Stephen Binz, we've gone inside the pages of Saint Junipero Serra's Camino, a pilgrimage guide to the California missions. To learn more about this book or to obtain a copy, visit bridge-b.com, Stephen Benz's website. There you'll find his speaking topics and all of his publications. To hear and or to download this conversation, along with hundreds of other spiritual formation programs, visit discerninghearts.com. Or you can find it in the free Discerning Hearts app or on whatever streaming platform you get your podcasts. This has been a production of Discerning Hearts. I'm your host, Kris McGregor. We hope that if this has been helpful for you, that you will first pray for our mission, which is to offer authentic and rock-solid spiritual formation freely to souls around the world. And if you feel us worthy, please consider a charitable donation, which is fully tax-deductible, to help support our efforts. But most of all, we hope that you will tell a friend about discerninghearts.com and join us next time for Inside the Pages, Insights from today's most compelling authors.